What's up guys, Asian here again with another theory crafting video, and today we're going to be discussing the difference between the Master's Bow and the Maelstrom Bow, as well as the difference between using either of them versus not using them at all. So this question kind of came up from a viewer who wanted to know how much DPS difference there is between the Master's Bow and the Maelstrom Bow. So the Master's Bow, for those of you guys who don't know what it is, it comes from Dragonstar Arena. It's a 4-man trial, so it is one of the most difficult content in the game to clear, in my opinion at least. It is a lot of fun too, but it does require you have 4 people in order to complete it. So you and 3 other friends are going to have to go through the various arenas in Dragonstar Arena and basically run through it. It's basically like a 4-man Maelstrom arena. So in that regard, it is more difficult because you do need 3 other people that are able to pull their own weight, ideally a healer, tank, and 2 DPS, or if you're feeling particularly daring, 3 DPS and 1 tank, in order to get the Master's Bow. So it is a little bit more difficult to complete compared to the Maelstrom Arena. However, because there are 4 people, you get 4 chances at getting the Master's Bow as a drop, assuming of course that your friends are willing to trade the Master's Bow to you if they happen to get the drop. So that's where the Master's Bow come from. You see it more often in PvP because of the set effect. The set effect is Caustic Arrow, which increases your weapon damage by 310 for all abilities against targets affected by your poison arrow. So you see this very often in PvP, where a lot of people will use poison injection in order to set up their burst combo in order to get that additional weapon damage boost. So once you hit somebody with poison injection, you basically have 8 seconds to get your burst off and kill them in PvP. So that's where you see it used most often on stamina DPS builds in Cyrodiil or even in Battlegrounds. So you don't really see it used as much in PvE, however some people do use it in PvE, mainly because they either haven't been able to get the Maelstrom's Bow from Maelstrom Arena, or they haven't managed to clear Maelstrom Arena yet. But they have managed to clear Dragonstar Arena instead. So that's kind of where you see Master's Bow being used. It's sometimes used by PvPers who are doing PvE content, again because they either haven't been able to get the Maelstrom Bow, or they haven't managed to clear Maelstrom Arena yet. So you will see it around, not really so much in trials, more often in 4-man content, mainly just because if you are doing vet trials, there is the strong possibility that you already have a Maelstrom's Bow in order to get onto the team in order to make the DPS cut. But Master's Bow is still a very potent alternative, as you'll see in a few minutes when we go over our spreadsheet. So kind of the argument for using the Master's Bow in PvE is that the Caustic Arrow set effect increases your weapon damage across all your abilities, compared to the Maelstrom Bow, which only increases the damage you deal with Endless Hail instead. So the argument there is that the Caustic Arrow set effect should come pretty close to the Maelstrom Bow, just because it's boosting all your damage across the board by 301 plus your major and minor brutality buffs. So it does scale with your brutality buffs as well. That being said though, Endless Hail is a very, very powerful dot. It is the strongest dot in the game. It typically makes up anywhere between 15 and 20% of your DPS in raids, sometimes even higher with the Maelstrom Bow. So it's going to be pretty hard to beat out the Maelstrom Bow, just based on my gut feeling. And when I went into the testing, that's kind of it's kind of what I went into the test kind of feeling that, the Maelstrom Bow is not really going to stack up against the Maelstrom Bow, but I was pretty surprised at the result, and I think you guys might be too. So basically what I did was I used the typical Stam DK setup that I usually have, which is 2-piece Veladreth, 5-piece Thunderflame, and 5-piece Vicious Ophidian, and I just changed up the bow. So that all the bows were Nirnhoned. I always used the double Ravage health poisons, and so I just kept the same rotation and basically did all my parses, just changing up the bow itself. So either the Masters, the Maelstrom, or I used a Nirnhoned bow Vicious Ophidian to simulate a non-Maelstrom, non-Master's Bow, because you still want the bow to be ideally part of one of your sets. So that's what I did to do my testing, and so here are the results. Let me pull them up and swap over. Okay, So here we have it. There's 18 parses here, 6 for each one. The Maelstrom Bow is the leftmost parse, Masters is the middle, and neither of them is the rightmost one. And so we can see here from our averages, we pulled an average of about 38k with the Maelstrom Bow. We pulled 37.3 with the Master's Bow, and we pulled 35.5 without either of them. So as expected, the DPS boost that you get from using either of them is pretty substantial. For the Maelstrom Bow, you're looking at about a 7% increase in DPS, and using the Master's Bow, you're looking at about a 5% increase in DPS. So the difference between Master's and VMA Bow ends up being around 1.9 to 2% difference in DPS. But if we look at the absolute value, you're talking about only about 700 DPS or so. So while it is going to be noticeable, it's not really going to make or break you. You can still pull very good DPS using the Master's Bow instead of the Maelstrom Bow. And I don't have any parses saved up because of internet issues, and I kept crashing, and Comment Metrics doesn't save parses if you happen to crash or log off. But generally speaking, the Comment Metric parses that I was seeing pretty much had the same DPS distribution in terms of like how much DPS each ability was contributing. So remember that the weapon damage boost that you get from the Master's Bow is across pretty much all the abilities that you use. So it doesn't really matter how much percentage DPS each ability is contributing before you use the Master's Bow. It's just that it's going to increase all of them by the same amount of weapon damage boost, so the DPS contribution is going to remain more or less the same between if you are using the Master's Bow. So if your poison injection was doing 7% of DPS without the Master's Bow, with the Master's Bow it would still be doing about 7% because the increase is flat across all your abilities. But the Maelstrom Bow improved Endless Hail's DPS by a considerable margin. On average, it was about a 3 to 4% increase in DPS contribution from Endless Hail. From the Maelstrom Bow. So I think that's where a lot of the DPS is coming from. Again, because Endless Hail is such a powerful dot and the Maelstrom Bow happens to buff it by a very considerable margin, you will see the Maelstrom Bow pulling ahead of the Master's Bow, even though the Master's Bow is increasing all of your abilities, how hard they hit. So it's just the Maelstrom Bow is just providing so much more DPS to Endless Hail, and Endless Hail itself is already such a powerful source of DPS that's just overpowering whatever flat increase that the Master's Bow is contributing. But nonetheless, like I said, using the Master's Bow is still a very good boost to your DPS compared to not using it. It's still a 5% increase in your DPS, and even though the Maelstrom Bow is 2% better, you can still pull very respectable DPS with the Master's Bow. As you can see here, we almost got a 38k parse with the Master's Bow. Right here, we got 37.9, so you can still pull very high DPS using the Master's Bow. So like I keep on saying in my build videos, gear, while it is an important part of your build, knowing your rotation is a lot more important. So if you have your rotation mastered, it doesn't matter which one you choose, you will be doing very good DPS regardless. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys found it informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.